Ma'am, we can start the session now.
Sure.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. A very warm evening to all of you. So, on behalf of Innovation and Incubation Center for Entrepreneurship, IISER Bhopal, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to the very first episode of Talk Series, the Startup Studio. So, like as we all know, entrepreneurship is the backbone of our economy as of now, and it plays a very crucial role in creating jobs, driving innovation, and promoting economic growth. However, the journey of an entrepreneur, as we know, can be very challenging, and there are so many ups and downs in the journey, and it requires a unique set of skills, knowledge, and mindset. So, our this current talk series aims to provide valuable resources and support for anyone interested in entrepreneurship and can help aspiring entrepreneurs take the first step towards starting and growing their own business. So, in this context, I would request Dr. Abhijit Patra, the coordinator of ICE and who is also an associate professor at our institute, IISER Bhopal, to kindly welcome and introduce our esteemed speaker to the participants. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Arun. And it's our pleasure to have Ms. Poini Bhatt in this session. A warm welcome to all the participants. And those who are not aware of, just to say that ICE is a technology business incubator established at IISER Bhopal in the year 2016 and supported by DST. So basically, ICE provides supports for providing research and development and training services and mentorship in the state-of-art incubation spaces and technology platform for technology-based entrepreneurship and facilitates the conversion of research activity into entrepreneurship ventures. So some of our major thrust areas are like life sciences, manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare, water, and Internet of Things and other related domains. So we are really expanding and trying to help our colleagues as well as the students to facilitate their entrepreneurship journey. And in this occasion, it is our great pleasure to have Ms. Poini Bhatt. She is one of the founding team members and currently Chief Executive Officer of SIGN, the technology business incubator at IIT Mumbai. She has been involved in more than 200 startups supported by SIGN IITB since 2004 and actively mentoring startups and innovators outside SIGN as well. She has handled several collaborative international programs for innovators and entrepreneurs. And Ms. Bhatt is a qualified legal and compliance professional, fellow member of the Institute of Company Secretariats of India, and tuned to dealing with entrepreneurship and technology business incubation, helping entrepreneurs for over a decade. She has an experience over 3 decades in industry and academia, and she is also member of several committees of government and trade association for innovation, entrepreneurship, and incubation, and a member on the board of several incubators. So it's a great pleasure to have you in today's talk. And once again, warm welcome, and we look forward to your session. Ms. Bhatt, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Patra. It's really pleasure being here, and then thanks for having me here, like, talking to your colleagues and your institute community. And thank you again for a kind introduction. Kind introduction. Yeah. As I was talking to you and those basically who were not on this online at that point of time, I think I would like to basically make this more as a interactive session. And I don't have any slides, but as Dr. Patra mentioned that, like, I've been associated for 18 years in this incubation activities, and we started very early on when entrepreneurship was not even mainstream or buzzword in the country. Yeah. So mainly I'm going to talk about, like, my experience or sharing some pointers about the startup, and specifically in context with academic setup or R&D setup. So, like, when we started, about entrepreneurship in IIT Bombay, it's kind of a dichotomy, right? That, like, the mindset at that point of time was basically, academic is more like a altruist activity. Research, publishing, student, etc. is a priority. Commercialization is kind of a distraction. So money making and academic doesn't go together. And especially in context with science and business doesn't go together. So these are the, these were the context, and I think things have changed, but you still come across those kind of mindset, like even in this milieu as well. So my thing is that, yes, of course, for scientists, researchers, innovative faculty members, uh, continuing with research, continuing with R&D activity, publication, it's very, very critical, very important. Yeah, or academics is also very important. But I think now the next step after this, and especially now that where we are as an ecosystem and how we see that science and technology are coming out from the academia and impacting, businesses in general, or people's lives in general. I think, faculty member also need to think beyond that, or students also basically take step back, that employment versus basically, entrepreneurship. Where do we want to go about, right? So the impact is not just in terms of developing science and technology or applied research, but real impact would be basically how do you bring them out and then, apply for the end usage, either via licensing route or via entrepreneurship. Yeah. Just to quote an example, by one, there's some, the paper that I was reading, that in the US since 2010, like in last 12 years, there are like more than 300 drugs approved for cancer research. And each of them started with NIH grant in an academic institution to academic scientists. Yeah. And that's where how academia and R&D setups are playing role in impacting lives. So I think this is a time we really need to think about it. Entrepreneurship is a buzzword. Academic setup plays a very, very crucial role in knowledge-based entrepreneurship. There is an expertise, there is talent, there is intellectual property, there are infrastructure, and institutional mechanism can help you bring some level of funding by way of grants or government programs or whatever to basically, develop your deep tech and deep science for further application. So this is the right time to basically go about it. And I'll just give you even over 18 years where we stand. Yeah. So we started our incubation in 2004 formally. Before that, we have a small pilot, but since inception, we have supported more than 200 startups, 209 to be very specific as I speak. Yeah. Founded by more than 600 entrepreneurs and similar number of innovators we have supported across various grants and programs. Out of this 200 plus startup, nearly 30% of startups are directly, spin out from IIT Bombay. Collectively, they have raised $700 million of fund, yeah, at a collective valuation of 2.5 billion of valuation. Yeah, and I'm talking about dollars. Yeah, yeah. So we have one unicorn, so that of course that unicorn basically adds to this $2.5 billion valuation. But having said that, there is a large number who have also generated. There are unicorns, there are like unicorns and all those stuff. Yeah, in our portfolio, but there are small companies who are doing tremendous, impact in various fields, which is a critical need of the country, like defense and securities and those kind of things. They may not have great valuation, but they're doing something which no other is doing in the country. Yeah. So those kind of impact has been basically generated by the startups. These startups collectively have also basically generated IP, more than 200 IPs. So on an average, one patent basically per startup. Many are like ICT also, they don't have patents. So there are several companies, many companies who have more than one patent also. Yeah. And collectively, they have created while they were in the incubator, because after going outside, it's difficult to track them. But they've created, while they are in incubator, more than 5,000 of employment. So these are some of the numbers at economic level, at impact level, that I'm talking about after 18 years within SIGN itself. And imagine now we have 200 incubators. Many of them have started in last 5 or 7 years, but after 10 years or 15 years, what would be the collective impact if the students of today or faculty member who are working on deep science or deep technology actually think about spinning out their activities, spinning out their IPs. Yeah. And this is a right ecosystem. For past 2-3 years, we have been telling, if you want to start, this is the time to start actually. The reason is that even if one fails, for faculty member, you do have your continuing job. For students, you learn so much that even as a failed entrepreneur, you get priority in getting absorbed in the industry. So this is really a right time to start across the country, and ecosystem is very mature, right? We have more than 300 incubators across the country. Just in academic setup, more than 200 plus corporate innovation programs. And what does this indicate? That now corporates are also willing to participate in startup innovation. Yeah. So we have always seen that corporates and academia, like the interaction between them is not at a desired level in our country. But we do see that gap is basically filling up between startup ecosystem, innovation ecosystem, and corporates. Corporates are willing to try startup innovations within their business requirement. They have startup program with various offerings. Some offers validation, some offers their own infrastructure, for opening their own infrastructure for the startup, so that they can go and use their laboratories, they use their tools, they can accelerate their process, developmental process. Some corporates are actually offering their embedding startup solution within their larger offerings. So there are a number of offerings basically coming from the corporates itself. So corporates have lots of interest in startup ecosystem, right? Just like, and I'm highly basically quoting this number, which is very, very lower than what is actual, but at least I know there are at least 1,000 angel networks and early VCs which are active in a very, very early stage. Even some, most of them are also at a stage which is a pre-revenue stage. Yeah. So we have investors also, and some of the investors have a basic, very domain specific interest, like say, for example, healthcare or agri-tech. So there are domain specific investors also. And now government have basically start to scale programs. So they have fellowship program like EIR, entrepreneurship fellowship. They provide proof of concept grant. They have seed support program. Yeah. And they channelize all those programs via incubators. So incubators also offers those programs for the startup associated with them. There are trade associations also actively participating in entrepreneurship. So this is the ecosystem that we have. very right ecosystem. And in this ecosystem, basically, in fact, incubators are sitting in middle of this ecosystem, connecting basically dot across the stakeholders. Yeah. So incubators are mere facilitators, but they're expected to create a robust ecosystem of, like, innovators, investors, entrepreneurs, industries, various service providers. So that is what is expected from an incubator, a mature incubator, to create. And so incubator is not just physical infrastructure, but beyond that, there's lots of intangible value addition that they provide to the startup. And that's what is expected of incubator. So, budding entrepreneurs here, my suggestion would be that, IISER Bhopal has an incubation center ecosystem, basically. And then even to the incubation center, if you create basically, bring all the stakeholder to the incubation center, you basically create a very strong internal environment where entrepreneurs can leverage these resources, right? And most importantly, incubators also basically provide the guidance or insight into the business aspects, right? And just to give you give you an example, how does it happen? So at Sign, faculty members, students, alumni, or outsiders, they come to us with a business idea. Yeah. And we have created a kind of a business review process where we involve external reviewers. So one is that, from technology perspective, there are technology faculty member we involve in the review process for technical feasibility, scalability, so on and so forth. But then we actually involve investors as well as entrepreneurs or industry experts, basically, to evaluate that business proposal. And those members actually give feedback to the entrepreneurs, what works, what doesn't work. And that's how basically they get a sense about, business aspect of entrepreneurship or startup. We also run boot camp. Yeah. And these are the boot camps, basically most incubator might also be running. And that's where entrepreneur can also basically, get that basically questions or thought process, enhanced when it comes to vis-a-vis startup. There are one-on-one engagement we do. We do demo day for industry, demo day for investors. And that's how, startups basically benefit out of a business incubator ecosystem. Yeah. And being an incubator, basically, or being an academic setup, it is easy to bring those stakeholders to the campus or in your network, which generally as an entrepreneur, you may not have a direct access to. Yeah. Another thing is that, just to, how does it work in terms of campus entrepreneurship? Yeah. There is a research, there is an innovation. Many times researchers basically, they really have priority or focus on publication, because that's one of their basically milestones that they deliverables as a faculty member, or even PhD students or master students, publication. So there is a sense of urgency or priority for publication. Yeah. But in the process, one may miss out basically protecting the IP. So maybe one needs to think about it, that this research or IP, how does it go in long term? What is the basically, user application or end application? And then you may want to take a call that whether you want to publish now or you want to protect the IP and then publish out there. I'll give a simple example, and it's not basically, uncommon thing. Basically, I have come across so many government institutions and laboratories, like for example, a very known uh, 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 laboratory in Ahmedabad, PRL, Physical Research Laboratory. They wanted to set up an incubator, and I was talking to them. And I was just talking about IP policy and patents and all those things. And they said, we don't have a single patent, because for us, major focus was actually on publication. Now, such an old, like, decades old laboratory, and then like you don't have a single patent. So I think if you want to commercialize, protecting IP, especially in deep science, yeah, is extremely important. Yeah. So there is basically research, there is innovation, there is R&D. Next step is basically, if there is a serious intention, work towards protection of the IP. Yeah. And then next process or next stage is to develop the proof of concept at a lab level. Yeah. And some kind of validation. Again, it could be at a lab level, but if at this stage, like industry or end user can be basically involved, nothing like that, because you get very early validation. But I'm talking right now, validation at a technology level right now. Yeah. So validation. So that is the next step. Third thing is that if you want to spin out, yeah, like typically in academic community, I have seen that like there's too much focus on technology and science, but one misses out the business aspect. Yeah. But as an entrepreneur, you need to understand whether your technology has a business case or not. Yeah. One has to do customer discovery, one has to do even market sizing. And now there are several programs, even like, in ecosystem, who can help you, who can give you direction. How do I do customer discovery? How do I do market sizing, and so on and so forth. Yeah. There could be some technology more relevant for, licensing, not really relevant for like, starting a case. Once you go through this customer discovery, market sizing, so on, or what would be my business case, if you go through that basically thinking process, brainstorming process, when you could figure out that whether this is relevant for licensing, or I can create a startup and maximize basically value out of this particular startup. So these are the things that is involved. So after validation, I think after or in parallel to validation, it's important to get some insight even on business aspect. Yeah. The biggest mistake that academia, so no offense here, because I also sit in academic community here, but they believe that deep tech or deep science will sell by themselves, by itself, which doesn't happen. That science has to be converted into product and solution, which is the need of the market. Yeah. That's where basically business case, happens. So on the contrary, one has to discover the market, do the market sizing, understand the competition, try to find out where is the gap, and that is where the solution has to be positioned. Yeah. So commercialization can be done like by way of entrepreneurship or by way of licensing. Each has its plus and minuses. One is that the use case, as I said, that not every technology, basically, if there is a technology which is, adding value to the large part of end product, perhaps licensing is a way to go. But if the technology or science can be converted into product itself, which has a significant market, I think then you want to do entrepreneurship. You want to offer entrepreneurship. Yeah. The licensing route had certain limitation because you lose your ownership. You lose your decision making in that. Once you give the technology on licensing, you lose ownership. You lose basically, decision making. Where do I want to take this forward? That decision lies with the licensee and not the innovators, right? Also, like, upside financial upside is limited to the royalty, whereas here financial upside is directly linked to the valuation of the company. Yeah. And you may not be able to participate further in further development of that technology that you have licensed. So these are the limitations of licensing. And if as a researcher, you believe that we have a very strong potential for end application, there is a significant market for that particular product or solution, I think entrepreneurship is a way to go for. I think I will just stop or pause here if you have any question, and then maybe I'll share some elements about what it takes to basically create a startup. Any particular question or? Okay, so maybe I can basically, bring some kind of aspect relevant to creating a startup here. So as I said, basically, one has to establish a business case. And some of the question basically you must ask is that who needs my product or solution? Yeah, other than me. It was me because I had worked on me. So I always basically, committed to my product, technology, solution, so on and so forth. But most importantly, if I have to make basically money out of it, who needs basically, what would be your market? Who is the user? Which is the industry? These are the questions you should be asking. And another question that basically one needs to ask is that what I'm working on, what are the similar? So like I said, okay, I'm working basically on a technology which is relevant, let's say, for a chemical industry. Yeah. So another question is that currently how they are dealing, basically solving the problem. Yeah. If my technology is not there, then how they are solving the problem, and how my technology, product or solution is superior to that existing technology. These are the questions I think one has to ask to establish a business case. And then you basically think about what is the motivation? Motivation is to make the product, solution to make money. Unless you are driven by that motivation, I think you may want to basically give it this to another entrepreneur who can basically leverage your technology, solution and product and make money out of it. If your motivation is not to make the product, convert the research, convert the innovation, convert the prototype into end product and sell it and make it. If that is not the motivation, perhaps you are not a right entrepreneur. Allow someone else to basically take this forward. Yeah. So thing is that any customer is going to give you money for your end product, not cool science or not cool technology. So those technology have to be converted into the product and then it has to be applied, right? And someone will pay for that. Yeah. So those kind of business thinking and those kind of motivation is very, very critical for, starting a venture. Yeah. Second step towards it that okay, we want to create a venture, but venture or entrepreneurship is not basically by is not a game for a single scientist or technician. Okay, now you require kind of a skill set, complementary skill set, right? Someone has a scientific skill set, someone has a business skills, someone will focus on technology or product development. Someone has to basically go and sell that product in the market, and someone has to manage the operation in between, right? So you require basically a team with that complementary skill set. And especially investors in early stage, they invest in people and scalability, potential scalability of, those technology as well as businesses. Yeah. So it's extremely important to create a, team around, complementary team when you get started. I think there were some question can basically.
Yes,
Ma'am,
ma'am.
there was a question.
Yeah.
What stage of startup? What stage of startup for seed funding is
Funding.
required?
Uh, no, so what is the question? I also saw something on chat box. So Prabhas, can you just read
Ma'am,
out?
we have a question on the chat box.
Huh?
How to investigate if an idea is achievable? I generally face obstacles over or underestimate the obstacles or process. So how to do a realistic analysis?
So that's where exactly I was telling you, right? That like you need to reach out. For example, how to investigate in if idea is achievable. I didn't get exactly what you are trying to say, but do you the question is that how do estimate or investigate that whether my idea is a need of a market? Is that the question? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. It is like to that. She wants to know that how to investigate that if the idea is achievable. Means she
Right.
can
So
convert
the
that into a realistic
point
analysis.
here is that if your idea pertains to particular industry or particular the customer segment, actually you need to go to those customer and discuss that this is the thing. There are customer discovery program where researchers and innovators are asked to identify 100 potential customers for your idea or technology or solution. List down 100 those customers, try to reach out them. You may not get answer for all 100 of all those customers, but at least even if you achieve 20 conversation, those conversation will give you an insight whether it is achievable or not, or it is goable or not, or they will give you a feedback that in current form it is not working out, but if you can do this, then it may be a need of the market. Yeah. So actually you have to list down your potential user, 100 users, and start conversing with them. And these are the customer discovery process. Programs who are actually pushing you towards that. Yeah. So this is where you need to work. Yeah. There was another question, Pravas, you say?
Ma'am, there is a question. At what stage a startup should be for eligible to get seed funding? It is mostly into that. At what stage the startup should be for eligible to get seed funding?
Right. So I think that's we have seen companies getting funded like right from idea stage, and we have also seen the company not getting funded even after revenue. So for investor, there are majorly two considerations. Who are the people? Yeah. Or maybe three consideration. Let me put this way. Who are the people? Are they going to, are they capable of executing the business that they are anticipating? That is one thing. So people, yeah. Second thing is that basically, what is the size of the market? Yeah. If your size of the market is just eventually like 10 customers or 50 customers over a period of 5 years, or if your size of market is such that you will not be able to generate revenue exponentially, say 1 crore to 5 crore to 15 crore kind of thing, but you will be continuously doing 1 crore to 2 crore to 3 crore over a period of 5 or 7 years, that is not the business that investor is willing to invest. They are looking at a scale, because every scale they get next level of investor, and that's where this investor will get their exit from. Okay, so I think it's not necessarily stage, but yes, validation, some revenue traction or some business traction is basically where the most of the money going. Like after that point, most of the money is going. But we have seen even for, there are basically, you know, businesses even at an idea stage, we have seen them getting funded. Okay, so more than stage, certain milestone is validation. So how do you go about it? You require, first thing you have to see whether my technology risk is taken away. Second is that product risk is taken away. And third is business risk. Business risk is basically market adoption and traction. Yeah, that's where the most basically money is going. But I think it is also good to, or it's also, you are also in a good space where you prove that technology risk and product risk is taken care of, right? There also you are in a good space to go. And I'll give you one example. We have a company which is basically into immunotherapy for cancer treatment. Yeah, they're right now they're at basically they are a company, as a company they are at a second you know, phase of human trial. Yeah, we engaged with this company 5 years back, where they were still doing lab validation. Yeah, at the lab validation, like they did it within their lab. There was like, you know, some data that got generated at a bench level and all those things. Then they did it animal trial. Yeah, and then they did very, very controlled trial with Tata Memorial Hospital. And that's why they actually demonstrated that that product risk is taken care of. Yeah, data basically that they could show. Yeah, and even the product was not fully ready. Human trial, not a single phase of human trial was done. They got almost, like, I think they got about $5 million of funding from a large pharma company. Yeah, because they demonstrated product risk was taken care of. Yeah, so depending on, like, you know, product or technology or customer profile, market profile, I think it can be after product risk, you can, it's safe to go to the investor. But when you go to the investor, I think you need to have understanding of your roadmap to go to market size, and how am I going to achieve that, and how am I going to make money and scale up further business. That roadmap you need to have. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Surely, ma'am. I feel that this answers this question.
Okay.
So if any more questions from our participants, we welcome.
I think like that pretty much answers the question, but there is a generally a question whenever a startup comes to us and ask this very general question, and I think this is the right forum to answer this thing. Like, as we know, earlier question was like how to like investigate if idea is achievable or not. Like, as you mentioned, if there is a chemical engineer, so whether that chemical engineer should go into the service field or in the product field, because at times it happens like when he or she starts a business, so there is like a need for the service or for the product. And as you know, the market is very volatile, and you mentioned about business risk as well. So how to exactly evaluate that thing and put up the milestones in front of an investor?
Yeah. So I think generally under chemical service, so let me put this way, service-based company, like, you know, generally, especially in B2B space, is not really scalable. It doesn't give you, like, you know, exponential growth. Also, service margins are very small. Yeah. And third limitation of service is that more service means you also require more people. Yeah. So that's where your margins are continuously under pressure. And that's not the space that investors are looking at it. Yeah. you develop your product, you sell the product, which has a, like, certain very established margin, right? And growth of your sales and, like, growth of need for the people, like, is not in the same proportion. Yeah. So that's why the investor has an interest to basically invest in scalability, faster scalability. Even, like, services, you can't scale so fast. Whereas if your product clicks, scalability is much faster. Yeah, that's where the investor's interest is, right? What, but, like, you could always have basically combination of that. You use service path for your initial survival. So start working on a product. You may use service for your initial survival, but your roadmap should be product and business and scale on product side.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. And
Yes,
there are examples. We have companies who have taken those kind of, in defense, in automotive, companies have taken those paths.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. So now second stage, second thing, so for one is basically, when you create a startup, establish your business case, customer discovery, and so on and so forth. You need to have founders team and some kind of, like, planning that you require. Like, even at a team level, as I said, you need to have a complementary skill set, right? Second thing is that your own basically capital structure. Yeah. So between founder, what kind of equity? Yeah. You need, it's important to have even founders agreement, because like two big, reason why startup fail. One is, of course, business failure. Yeah. And another is basically teams getting split because their goals are not aligned. Yeah. So, and one, you have given equity, one founding team member basically is, splitting and going out, you lose your equity, and actually then those founder that basically business are not going to go further, right? Because 30% of equity, say there are, say, 3 members, and each of you say 30-30-30, like, distribution, equal distribution, and one founder going out, like, who is not going to contribute to the company, non-functional, non-contributive founder, 1/3 of the company ownership with them, no investor will invest in the company. Yeah. So it's very important to do founders agreement to deal with, like, roles and responsibility for each of them. How do you deal with in case of disagreement? How deal with a situation when founder wants to go out, like, taking the equity back? Or how do you deal with that? You start with 2 member or 3 member, and then you realize that we also need one more founder. So how do you dilute each of them? These are the basically aspect getting covered in founders agreement. So for entrepreneur, it's very important to basically have founders agreement upfront. Then, like, some kind of go-to-market strategy you have to figure out, like, how do I target my first customer? What would be my pricing, commercial, then at scale distribution, and so on and so forth. Some kind of roadmap or pricing. It always, by the way, every business plan that I have seen, they always evolve. It is never as per the original script. Yeah, they evolve over a period of time. But this gives you basically some kind of focused direction where I want to go. And then you take an informed decision when you pivot or you change your direction. Yeah. And this also working basically on a roadmap with all this all this basically aspects. When you reach out to the investor, you have basically, you are prepared to answer investors' questions also. So it's important to do all those things, right? Then fundraising. So there are, like, stage-wise one, some, like, just when you ask that at what stage I should go or I'm fundable. But then even, like, there are different stage, different kind of funds available. So for example, there are grants, idea to proof of concept. So pre-product, you may not find angel or VC coming and investing in your startup. So can you look around various grant program across the country, or can you work with your incubator who can help you get some kind of CSR grant to build the product? So there are grants that can be explored. Yeah, so there are idea to proof of concept grants or program available at a state level, at central level, even at a corporate CSR level. You can basically, try your luck out there. Then there are angel investors who typically invest at the stage, like, proof of concept to product stage. Like the angel investors, money you get is small money, but they will help you achieve, that money will help you achieve your significant milestone to go to next level, right? Then there are basically seed funder whose ticket size is bigger than angel investor, but typical milestone that they basically you can achieve, like, like finishing the product, regulatory requirements, certification, early so basically manufacturing of small quantity or early manufacturing of small quantities or something like that, right? And then for scale up, you have series A and those. So you need to, when you go to investor, you have to understand that investor invest at what stage. You go to basically series A level where your product is not ready. So those investors will not invest in you at all. So you have to understand your stage and go to the investor who operate in those stage. That's one thing. And second thing is that you look at, like, if an investor who have always invested in IT or ICT kind of companies, and if you are basically company into chemical engineering side, or if you are company into basically hardcore manufacturing or biotech or medtech, those ICT investors are not going to invest in your venture. Yeah. So try to understand the stage and profile of the investors and then go to those investors. Yeah, reach out to those investors. Yeah. For investors, as I said, the criteria for fundraising or for investing, basically, they invest basically in people, what kind of validation that you have done on your product or on your market size, scalability. These are the things that they look at it. Yeah. And certain investor focus in certain domains, say agri sector or healthcare sector or rural technology or ICT. Yeah, those kind of. So basically, what we say, your product is fit to the market, that validation you do, or that kind of basically, groundwork you do. You also do the groundwork that your venture is fit for an investor or not, right? These are the few things basically you can look at it. I will again stop or pause here. Any question around this?
Ma'am, I think this pretty much answer all the queries. To sum up, like related to operations and founders agreement, selection of the team, and all those things. I think there is one question from Miss Sunita. You can unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, I think she, is it mute? Is she muted by the admin? Or, yeah. Yes, Sunita.
I think there is some technical glitch at her hand, I guess, ma'am.
Okay.
So,
Sure.
ma'am, just one last thing, a last piece of advice. What would you give to these startups who are really struggling, like, to grow in the market, or, as there is one thing, they are passing through the valley of death stage. So how you would advise them how to cope up with that thing?
Okay. I think Sunita is there. That is there any future in food industry? So Sunita, there are lots of food tech startup that we see these days. Yeah. Right at a so like there are overlapping also. So agri tech and those kind of things. So see, some of the startup that we have is basically into alternative protein, alternative milk. Yeah, we have into basically in agri-tech, basically, so food tech, especially enhancing the shelf life of, agri produce. We have seen food tech startup in actually doing quality assessment. So there's a packaged food, right? But that food is basically now and it also has an expiry date, but you don't know the quality aspect of that. Actually, food is good quality, which is edible or not edible or whatever it is. So there are now quality, so image processing, and then like your quality assessment kind of startup. So we have seen startup in agri side also. We have seen certain startup exactly food tech or whatever. So even like sugar cane. So like now they are pre-packed sugar cane, basically, the drinks that they are giving. Then also basically we have seen in jaggery side. So variety of startups we have seen in food tech. So I would say yes, there is a potential in food industry also, and there are investors actually investing in those also. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sure that it covers this question.
Yeah.
Ma'am, and last question from our side, from an incubator point of view, what are the things you would suggest so that we can encourage our faculty members who are in deep science level to inculcate the process of entrepreneurship so that they could start themselves to think up to startups. So that what is the suggestions you would like to give?
I think so. Let me put this way, one is that I have already said, right, that faculty members should have a very strong motivation, basically, to maximize value of his or her research in terms of impact, not only at an end user level, but also in terms of creating impact by generating wealth and value out of the technology, right? So motivation is the key thing. Second thing is that startup, again, it's not a basically, just a side business. It's a full-time job. So faculty member may already have their own job. So they have to identify good set of a co-founder so that faculty member can basically assume the role of technology or science side. And there's a other team member who assume the role on execution side, right? So team member is extremely important out there. Yeah. Third thing is that faculty member also need to basically kind of a switch the mindset, because most of the time I've seen that they are working on certain science and technology and they feel that that is the only thing, but market need could be completely different, right? So understanding the market and reshaping the work towards market need is very important. Now that could be for example, one faculty member could be doing very high-tech thing, but market may not need that high-tech. Need to step down and create a product which is need of the market, right? So that is one aspect. But I think at an institute level also one can do quite a bit, that you need to have a conducive IP policy. So if a faculty member wants to start a venture based on his or her technology, yeah, can you have a policy, licensing policy, which is very startup friendly or entrepreneurship friendly, where you do not ask for basically upfront money, but some deferred payment or very, very small load, because startup don't have cash upfront, right? Yeah. Second thing, in the institute, can you open up as an institute your infrastructure for the startup to access, continue their work, lab work or developmental work, or if you have metal facility or 3D facilities, so product development work. Yeah, so that is very, very important. Can you have a very conducive policy for faculty member to even engage, if not as an entrepreneur, engage with a startup as a mentor? Yeah, so consulting against equity or something like that, right? Yeah, all those basically. Her thing is that now when you talk about I'm at least taking an example of IIT Bombay or any academic institute, you from lecturer or associate or assistant professor to associate and professor, there are some milestones or deliverables like paper publishing and research and student and PhD and conferences and all those stuff. Can you also have that, starting up or association with startup can also be considered for those kind of rewards to a faculty member? So these are the things basically, and most importantly, like kind of a mindset change across the community, student level, faculty member, everyone, that commercialization is not really a bad word. Yeah,
Right.
it's not really a bad word. It's a good thing to do that kind of mindset change. So this is more of an institutional aspect. Yeah. And activity on the campuses, can you have, like, we have IISER, which is doing amazing work. They bring, through the year, they continuously conduct various some or the other event related to entrepreneurship, and that enhances understanding of the campus community on starting them. So these are some of the suggestions.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. This will definitely be helpful to us. And at last, I would request Dr. Patra to please conclude the session.
Thank you.
Sir, please.
Thank you, Ms. Bhatt. It's a wonderful
Thank you.
session. And I'm very happy that it is also very interactive questions, which I think most of them we have asked and discussed with you. I'm sure that whatever the suggestions you have provided, with that, some of our students and some of the faculty members who have attended the session, they will be benefited. And from IISER, on behalf of IISER, we would like to definitely support this ecosystem in the central part of India, and we'll take further suggestion from you, and it will be our pleasure to host you at IISER Bhopal, so that we can have a physical meeting and discuss further in this context. And thank you very much for this wonderful, insightful, interactive session, and wish you a wonderful evening ahead and good time ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. We can conclude the session. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you
giving
very
us the
much.
time.
Pleasure talking to your community.
I also thank Prabhas and Arun to coordinate and finding time from busy schedule of Ms. Bhatt. So also thanks all the IISER member for their enthusiastic participation.
All the best to all of you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.